Hey everybody, welcome to the Indie Hour. This is a show which we do weekly where you get to find out about a sort of like lesser known or not mainstream tabletop miniature game that you may not have heard of and that, deserves more attention. So this is picked by the patrons, GMG community on Patreon, and every single weekday select a game. We will record that game live in front of a studio audience. You can see here the chat, which is this way over here, where we hang out before and after. There's kind of a pre-show and a back afterwards show too, where we talk about the game. Extra content on Patreon for this one, and then the main video, which if you guys watch this on YouTube live, or not live, but public, goes out the week after. So usually what's happening is if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not a GMG patron, we are recording the next one that same day on Patreon. You can get involved. And there's a weekly poll. It usually goes on Mondays. We pick a new game to cover. And this week they picked Dead Gods. This is a very interesting selection. This one. We're actually going to do two things. We're going to do Dead Gods and its supplement, which is called Unholy Scavengers, because these are short format zine style miniature agnostic miniature games, and they're pay what you want, which means you can get this creator's work for whatever you want to pay, and you can use any collection of miniatures you want. Thematically speaking, this is a great sort of like example of the kind of game that anyone can make. It uses beautiful layout, but a lot of like public domain art. I think that skeleton from I'm not sure exactly who the artist for the skeleton or the jester is on the two books that you can see sort of like below me here and here. But I know it's all public domain. I think it's like either woodcuts, like medieval woodcuts, or some type of like, witch's manual illustrations. And just this like remixing of public domain assets and a beautifully formatted, like 4-page, mind you, short form miniature game. And then the expansion adds all kinds of additional content to it. So these two little zines, you can get them for like $1 or $2. Throw the artist, throw a coin to your Witcher, basically designer wise, and and have a great like sort of Dark Soulsy, Elden Ringy kind of miniature game. The setting is a fallen world. The gods are all dead. There are relics all over the place, and these relics are being fought over by the survivors because they bring like a last glimmer of power into the world to kind of get you through the next day. So very dark, very hopeless, very #28. And this streamlined set of rules is very much to the liking of people who are primarily kit bash culture. So they like the theme and the mood and the look of things, and they're not particularly interested in a granular gameplay experience. They just need a framework basically for what they're taking and how it's going to work. So without further ado, let's check it out. All right, Dead Gods. Again, these are available through Drive-Thru RPG, and you can grab them for whatever your assessed price is. Again, it's pay what you want, and it's got some pretty good reviews. 13 ratings, 2 reviews. Everybody seems to like it just for exactly offering what it says in the tin. It came out 2023, and then was last updated in March of 2024. So it's got a sort of like current set of updates and streamlining and any things that wanted to be added. Dead Gods Unholy Scavengers is the expansion. Again, it's pay what you want, and this is going to add new powers for new war cult leaders like Lady Cordelia Spite, Magnus Crag, Vestre the Eye, and Dreth the Oracle. 20 new models to add to your war cults, and a host of brand new special rules, 5 new scenarios, and some custom sacred relics. You can go join the Dead Gods community to share your war cults, play reports, and chat with fellow players. There's like a Discord, I think, and a bunch of other social media communities that you can join in to check out. All right, so let's have a look at the rulebook itself. Like I said, cover wonderfully like laid out. Again, great simple game design, and then 3 pages of rules. Boilerplate, right? The log line. Dead Gods is a fast-paced miniature skirmish game where each player controls a war cult, trying to uncover sacred relics left behind after the cataclysm of heaven, in which hundreds of gods were murdered. Cities, mountains, and forests were left in smoldering ruins as gods fell to earth, rotting swiftly as all deceased deities do, leaving holy artifacts scattered amongst the desolation. So, again, really, you're getting the energy of like an Elden Ring, you know what I mean? Of like a very dark fantasy. Everything's kind of decaying and falling apart. There's an aura of like everything's kind of forgotten. You're picking through the ruins of whatever's left. And now we're just right into the game design. And I like the first thing, the line here is, whenever you can't decide on a rule, go with whatever's the most fun. Or roll for it. that's a very, again, kit bash culture idea of like, we're doing an immersive thing first. This is the reason for us to pull our models off the shelves and play together. Just decide what's more fun. Like, talk to your opponent and communicate. Objective, the first player to take 3 relics off the south side of the table, or the last model to have models on the table wins. So the core design here, and this is a smart design feature if you're ever thinking about creating a core mechanic or getting started writing a miniature game, you can boil the core scenario into your actual like rules layout. And it's funny because this is something I thought about in Last Days. Was a general mission in Last Days, or in this game, is get the loot, get off the table, right? Or be the last person left alive. What's great about that is in the expansion where there's 5 new scenarios, it's alterations to the standard gameplay thing. So you don't have to over-explain a scenario over and over again. You just say it's this plus or minus these elements, basically. And it allows for really good modular addition and subtraction to the game, but it means that you can have the game's playable basically in the bottle, you know? So you've got the core mechanics with like a reason to play, a thing to do, and an objective kind of in the engine of the car. And then you bolt whatever you want around that engine to add or subtract new things to it. Just an interesting thing to do, but having the objective come second in the rules layout, I think is great. Play space, 3x3 or 2x2. It's kitchen table with plenty of elevated terrain to block line of sight. Models and dice, D6s and 28mm fantasy models. War cults, it's a band of scavenging hopefuls trying to use sacred relics of fallen gods to fuel their attempts to raise themselves to godhood. War cult consists of 4 to 6 miniatures of equal points. And then a leader, every war cult needs 1. This is a special rule you can give to one of your models. Then you have a stat line. You can see here in purple, these are any amendments that were made last year. Activations, this is what you're needing to roll. Now, this does use an interesting RNG mechanic where you have a stat basically for activations between 1 and 5, I think. I think a 6 is always a failure. And this is a game where you're trying to roll under your stats. So this would be familiar to people who play like Fallout Wasteland Warfare, where you have the special stat line, right? It's 1 to 10, it's on a D10. This will be a 1 to 5 because a 6 would always fail, right? And you're trying to roll equal to or under. And the activation stat's really important because it's the one that's going to allow you to have 1, 2, or no actions and become unruly. And the idea here is that you're not fully in control of these maniacs that are going to, sifting through the garbage trying to find dead pieces of gods. Move, pretty self-evident, how far you move in inches. Battle, your melee stat. Fire, your shooting stat. Defense is your save stat. And then momentum is almost like a might point stat. You can use it to do additional things. You can use it to move extra inches or reroll dice. And we get right into playing the game. So we don't know how to do things yet, but this is another piece of interesting game design. If you're trying to make a very short format rule set, getting right into like the temporally staged things that you're going to do. So you're going to collect your miniatures, you're going to lay out a table. It's going to be this big. Now we set up. Each player takes in turns to place as much terrain as you want, as long as it's fairly evenly split. Objectives. Each player takes in turns placing 5 sacred relic markers, 1 inch diameter on the table. One must be central and the other no closer than 6 inches to their marker at the edge of the table. So an uneven number of markers will go in the middle of the table. They have to be 6 inches in, right? And this is what you're going to try and, get off the table to win. Deployment, set up models at opposite edges, no more than 3 inches away from the edge, or corners in a 2x2 space. So you have to go corner to corner in 2x2. Anywhere else, you can have a 3-inch deployment zone. And then playing the game, at the beginning of the game, roll a d6. Highest goes first. The last player to activate goes first next round. So you only randomize on turn 1, and then as a sort of a catch-up mechanic, the last player to activate goes first in the next round. You actually get to go twice at the end, which is interesting. Because usually it's the opposite. And I'm wondering what the mechanical reasoning for that is, because typically what happens is the last player to go in a turn goes second the next round. And that way you're always alternating activations over and over again. And if you tend to get model advantage, you don't landslide. So that's one that I'm not sure if the wording's wrong on that, but it's atypical, so it jumps out at me as being a rule that you don't typically see written that way. Typically what you would have is you would have the last person to go second in the following turn without rolling, because then you're always doing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Activation. Attempt to activate a model by rolling 2d6. So if you get both those dice equal to or under the activation stat, they get 2 actions. 1, they get 1 action. And if neither of them are under their activation stat, they become unruly. And there's special rules. Some models get better when they're unruly. So like there's like berserk models that if they go unruly, their defense actually gets better because they just stand there screaming. And then actions, models can perform the following actions. So first, full movement up to your movement stat. Can only move through friendly models. Charge, move up to your model's movement stat into base contact with an opponent. and make a melee attack, but it ends your activation. So even if you only have one action, you can still charge. And I think that's a clever piece of game design. It's kind of subtle, but it means that even if you don't get that activation roll, because they're putting RNG into how your models activate, like how in control of them you are, even if you only get one of those two actions, which you'll probably typically always do, you still get to make a charge if you want. Focus shot, shoot at half range with no penalty from full movement, or full fire, shoot at full range. If this model also performs a full movement, it takes a +1 penalty to fire rolls. So that's pluses and minuses to the dice roll, not to your stat, because that would be good. It's bad when it goes to the dice roll. Then claim an objective. Secure a sacred relic by rolling a 1 to 3 on a d6. You don't automatically find them. You have to dig them up out of the ground and then wrestle them under your control. Melee actions. The charging model makes a melee attack. Roll a d6. If equal or under their battle stat, they've scored a hit. Otherwise, they've missed. Regardless of hit or miss, the opponent moves their model 1 inch back, so kind of a Lord of the Rings, you push back model. If unable to, put a marker down to show they were pushed away. After a hit, the opponent rolls a d6 in the defense stat. If the result is above, place a wound token next to their model. Shooting, any model makes a focus fire or full fire and has line of sight to the enemy models, rolls a d6. If the result's equal to or under their fire stat, they get a hit. So again, you're just trying to roll under stats here. Make a defense roll. If the result is above, place a wound token next to the model. Second shots, if you do the same action twice in a row for shooting, it's +1 penalty to hit. Concealment, you get +1 penalty to hit again. And because it's only d6s, these penalties add up fast, right? If you have a 1 or a 2 as your stat and you're getting +2 because you're making a second shot and they're concealed, you're just not hitting. Unless you roll 1, because a 1 would always hit. Rough terrain, whenever moving over rough terrain, every 1 inch movement is doubled. And then claiming objectives, when a model's touching an objective on a 1 to 3, they become carrying it, but their movement's halved. And if a model goes off the table, they're considered out of action. And then wounds, for each wound on a model, gain +1 each activation roll. If they are unruly while wounded, they are instead out of action, move from play, and drop any objectives. So that's really interesting, is you don't ever die until you make an activation roll, right? You just get wound markers. You actually don't know if the model is going to go out of action or not. It just makes them harder to activate. And when someone fails both rolls and has a wound marker, they basically succumb to their wounds. It's a really clever way of handling damage without having a wound stat, because you might have noticed there was no health stat on them. And it does mean everyone's activation number becomes really important then, because it also kind of determines their health. Climbing and falling, models climb and fall at half their speed, and for every 3 inch, take a wound if you don't pass a defense roll. And then spending momentum, a model can spend 1 momentum to reroll any of their dice or move 3 extra inches. So momentum is basically like a budget of boosts that you can give to your models. And then a pile of special rules. There are more in the expansion. Brute is -X to defense rolls while unruly. So if you aren't controlled, you can still freak out and you do your Hulk thing and beat your chest and you can't be damaged. Graceful, ignore rough terrain. Holy hands, while in possession of a sacred relic, gain -1 activation rolls, which also makes you healthier. Holy shield, -1 defense rolls. Horrifying. After model successfully activates, choose one unactivated enemy within 3 and they get +1 to their activation rolls. That could literally kill somebody. You could scare somebody to death if they're wounded. Leader, this and all allied models within 4 gain -1 to activation rolls. So again, makes you healthier, which is a really clever thing. Your activation stat basically allowing you to stay alive with wound tokens. And your leader then kind of having a built-in extra wound, if that makes sense. And also the fact that he makes the guys around him, inspired to fight harder and not die. Mighty, gain -X to battle rolls when charging, having taken another action. Relic Guardian, while within 3 of a sacred relic, this model gets -1 to its battle rolls. Scout, this model can be deployed 6 inches up the table. Self-flagellation. Immediately after activation, you can gain a wound to recover a momentum. That's an interesting one if you're trying to get off the table. Take a wound and then try and run away by getting extra movement. Shadowy, when concealed, this model doesn't grant line of sight, so you're basically invisible when you're in cover. Sniper, -1 to full fire rolls. Stealthy, enemies always treat this model as concealed. Unliving, when this model becomes out of action, roll a d6. On a 1, it returns with 2 wounds, which means you're like a zombie. You just do the zombie stand-up. And we got our army lists. Okay, so you get 30 points to buy a war cult. Add 2 points to a model to give the leader rule, because any of them can be your leader. And this is where we get into, I think, kind of the fun of the mission design here. And what's interesting is we also have some special war cults that you can play as, and they get special rules on top of it. So pretty much any fantasy class you can think of. And again, very Dark Soulsy, right? Very Salt and Sanctuary, where you're playing as kind of a general class. Assassins, right? Activation on a 3, so you have to roll 2 dice and try to get under 3s. 6-inch move, brawl 4, fire 3, 2 defense, and then momentum of 1. The Bowmaster, and you'll see kind of the human average is activation 3, move 6. I think it's the Champion's activation 4, who's a bit more expensive. The High Priest, the Knight, I think that's it in this section, because there's kind of like lesser and greater versions of each character. But then Stealthy Shadowy for the Assassin, meaning you can't shoot him from far away, because he's always going to count as being in cover, but when he's in cover, he can't be attacked in line of sight with shooting. Bowmaster gets Sniper 1 for that full fire, bit better at firing, but worse at fighting in melee. Champion doesn't have a fire stat at all, but he's Brawl 4, 2 momentum, and defense 4, so he's like super tough. And he's got Mighty 1, and he's got an activation score 4. A Ghost Warrior. This is interesting, because I can almost see like the Warhammer, what do you call them? The Night Haunts as this kind of a thing, or like a Wraith. He's got the Unliving rule, so he can come back to life with extra wounds. No fire stat. And then the Golem, Brute 1, so he gets that freak out if he goes unruly, doesn't activate. Can still shoot weirdly. I guess he throws rocks or something like that. He's defense 3, but momentum 2. High Priest, Self-Flagellation, can take a wound, get a momentum back, and Holy Hand, better picking up relics. He's kind of a brawler, kind of defendy, but has a high activation stat. Knight has the Relic and Guardian rules, Relic Guardian rules. What does that one do? I think I remember that. I was just looking at it. Relic Guardian. Oh, well, within 3 of Sacred Relic, -1 to battle rules. He's better at fighting around objectives. We got the Peasant, just a dude for 3 points. Just basic dude, Relic Hunter, Holy Shield, and Holy Hand. It's a Tia Carrera. Not to be confused with Asia Carrera. That was a TV show from the early 2000s that if anyone remembers it. Also, she was the love interest in Wayne's World. Skirmisher, 7 points. Scout and Graceful, so ignores that the difficult terrain penalty, and also gets to advanced deploy. And a Witch with Horrifying and Shadowy, and wants to live deliciously. So again, you're a war cult, right? You're weird worshippers of dead gods trying to ascend to godhood. So you have 4 different war cults in here, and this is just enough kind of like flavor to the game, I think, to inspire kit bashing, which is the idea. Pale Druids, worshippers of the Crimson Stone, this woodland cult grinds up sacred relics, adding to their dark wine and supping during abominable feasts. The wine gives them the ability to communicate with nature itself, bending it to their will. The Black Maw, centuries ago, the Black Maw discovered a creature who rises in the pit. They believe by feeding the pit creature relics, it will emerge as a new and terrible god under their control. The Order of the Stars, a cult of seers and mystics who follow omens and auguries to determine the location of the relics. Their leader, Vestra the Eye, seeks omniscience by using relics as part of her incantations. And then the Eternal, a wealthy cult obsessed with immortality and necromancy. Leader Lady Cordelia Spite uses relics to unlock the secrets of life everlasting. I imagine it's just the cult from Death Becomes Her. If you haven't seen that movie, it's one of Bruce Willis's finest roles. Also one of Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn's best roles. And then, again, these are just for flavor until you get to the expansion, in which case there's some unlockable characters and stuff for those specific cults, and it inspire like how you build and paint things. And then a random Sacred Relics roll. Add some flavor to your relics. Roll D6 and see what you find. A Shining Tooth, a Glowing Eyeball, a Vial of God Blood, an Intelligent Weapon, a Tome of Secrets, and a Jewel forged from Starlight. That's it. A game packed into 3 pages. So this is the core rules. Now, Unholy Scavengers, which again, this is a pay what you want, and it's here on Drive-Thru RPG. I'm going to link all this stuff in the video description. It's going to add a bunch of stuff. Again, 3 more pages of rules. And it adds new models, types, scenarios, and special rules to your Dead Gods games. So unique models, you only have 1 of each one. If it's War Cult specific, it'll be tagged, and then you can only have each of them. It's usually the leaders of that specific cult. And then leader models, some models already have the leader rule. It means you can only have 1, and you can't get a new one. New special features, Bloody Rage. If there's a wound token on this model, it gets -1 to battle rolls. So again, you might die when you activate, but you're better at fighting because you start freaking out. It's a very good Hulk rule. Blood Sacrifice, when this model deals a wound after charging, it can spend a momentum to deal a second wound. Dread Pipes, friendly models within 6 reroll battle rolls. So you have like an inspirational presence. Exorcism, enemy models with unliving within 3 get +1 to defense rolls. That's a cool one. It basically makes them harder to, or easier to banish, but like harder to keep on the table. Holy Shot. While holding a sacred relic, this model gets -1 to fire rolls because it gets fired up by the holy relic. Necromancy for friendly models with unliving within 12 goes out of action, returns on a 1 or a 2. I like that one. So if somebody basically has that rule, like you give that to a witch or one of the models that are in here, and then you take a bunch of unliving models, then they can come back to life. Seer, any friendly model activating within 3 of this model may turn a failed activation dice into a success. That one's really cool because that just keeps you alive. You have to kill the Seer or somebody just comes back to life. Slayer, this model gets a -1 to battle rolls against enemies with Battle 4+. Basically, it's literally the Troll Slayer rule from Warhammer Fantasy. The bigger and tougher the bad guy, the better he is at fighting. Spider, climb at full movement. Tear apart. If this model rolls an unmodified 1 in melee, deals an extra wound. It's like a critical hit. And then each of the cults gets a unique model. You get Lady Cordelia with Necromancy, Shadowy, Leader, and Unique. Magnus the Crag for the Black Maw, Horrifying, Leader, and Unique. And again, these are activation 5 models, so very hard to kill. And each kind of have a strength. So like these guys are kind of brawlers, brawl 4, and then their fights or their fires are a bit lower. Vest for the Eye, no fire at all, but has a defense of 3 and 3. Momentum points. Blood Sacrifice, Self-Flagellation, Leader, and Unique. And then Dreth the Oracle has Seer, which is super powerful. Leader and Unique. And an activation of 5. This one is a Fire of Force. It's a shooter. That one seems super powerful. And then new models, an Abomination, but we only have 30 points to play with. An Abomination with Horrifying and Mighty 1. This is a giant, like, huge kill machine. A Beast with Tear Apart and Scout. A Berserker with Bloody Rage. So it's like a fighter with that new Bloody Rage rule. A Blood Priest with Blood Sacrifice, Holy Shield, and Self-Flagellation. A Dancer, Graceful and Spider. A Dread Beast. I can imagine the Dancer even being like the robot girls from Atomic Heart. Or the Splicers from Bioshock. A Dread Beast, it's a big one, 10 points. Tear Apart, Brute, Slayer, and Graceful. A Ghoul, Unliving, and Horrifying. And what's cool is some of the models here with their weird like troop types get used in the scenarios later on. A Ghoul Hunter, Exorcism and Holy Hand, gotta hunt the ghoulies. Musicians with Dread Pipes and Graceful. Necromancer with Necromancy and Horrifying. And that could pair with the ghouls as well to bring them back to life. Because ghouls could just be in zombies as well. Pistol Priest. I don't know why that just makes me happy. I want a movie called Pistol Priest. Holy Shot and Sniper 1. Rune Priest, kind of like maybe a Nordic rune caster. Seer and Holy Hand. Runner, Spider and Scout. Skeleton Warrior, just unliving. A Skulk, maybe like a Goblin. With Shadowy, Spider, and Stealthy. A Wild Guardian with Relic, Guardian, and Brute. And that adds, what is it? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 new models and 4 uniques. And then you heard me comment earlier on like core scenario is in the core rules. We get the later on expansion that I was talking about earlier here. So 4 or 5 new scenarios. We get the Tomb. An ancient tomb unearthed by Godfall. Within stirs dread corpses brought to life by sacred relics. So you set up 4 sarcophagi, 12 inches apart, cover the rest of the table with scatter, broken walls, and tomby terrain. And the rules are a normal game of Dead Gods, but after each round roll a dice. On a 5 or 6, a ghoul emerges from a random sarcophagus. It has 2 actions, move towards the nearest model and charges if possible, so you get used these ghoul stats here. And at the beginning of each round, all remaining ghouls move towards the close enemy in charge. So you're trying to get the relics out, but also there's just zombies coming out of all of the... It's almost like the Mummy, right? Brendan Fraser trying to like loot a tomb while there's 1,000 mummies coming to kill him. Mountain Run, the town of Hammerwall has been decimated by a fallen god, but the extreme weather may cause problem for war cults. Set up a standard setup, but with plenty of hills, ruins, and trees. At least a course should be covered in difficult terrain, which is ice. And you play a normal game of Dead Gods, except at the beginning of each round, roll a dice. On a 5 or 6, a mighty blizzard kicks up. All models move 2 inches slower, and anything 6 inches from a model is outside of line of sight, because there's a terrible storm. The name of this one also makes me happy. The Moon Beast. A god has fallen into the Brackenwood. To claim their relics, war cults need to be content with the vicious Moon Beast that haunts the woods. Set up densely packed terrain. Rules are a normal game of Dead Gods, but place a Moon Beast in the center of the table. On a player's activation, they may instead activate the Moon Beast, use the Dread Beast rules, but with 8-inch movement. The Moon Beast can obtain objectives. So yeah, basically, you can activate a Moon Beast if you want instead. And then unstable relics. Sometimes sacred relics act strangely in the mortal world. This reminds me of the episode of G.I. Joe where they have to move the exploding crystals across town, and they're being chased by a massive blob. If anyone remembers that episode, it's a banger. It's a normal game of Dead Gods, except 2 relics are marked on their base. Shuffle the relics. So basically, it's a game of Hide the Queen, 3-card Monty, but with 5 relics. Shuffle the relics and place 5 as normal without seeing the underside marking. And whenever a relic's obtained, flip it. Marked relics are unstable, doing an automatic hit to anyone touching it. If that model fails a defense roll a d6. On a 1, they take a wound. On a 2, they teleport 6 inches away. On a 3, this model swap for a beast. Keep the same wounds. You get transformed. On a 4, this model loses all their special rules. On a 5, it teleports 12 inches in the air and falls. So you just go straight up and then come crashing down and might die. On a 6, take 2 wounds. And once the relic has dealt its effect, it becomes a normal relic. I love that one because it's very Zona Alpha Stalker, right? Where you're finding relics in the zone. This game would actually make a really good like Stalker Metro 2033 analog, actually. And then finally, the vault. A building at the center of the table contains a vault. Mark the underside of 2 relics and shuffle. Place the 5 as normal. The marked relics are vault keys. Anyone with the key can unlock the vault as long as they end the round in base contact with the vault. The first to open it wins, and you get whatever's inside. And then finally, just more random sacred relics. Just some more relics. Just roll a d6. A withered god hand, a gleaming antler, an angelic feather, a scorched beard, a scorching beard. If that's a Clutch reference, I'm going to be so happy. Because if you haven't seen the Clutch Saw Burning Beard, then, I mean, it has Cylons in it. Like, it's a great music video. And then a serpent staff. And that's it. That's our expansion for Dead Gods. So, what do I think? I think this is a wonderful example of what you can do with writing a really clean core mechanic and then a fun list of expansions. The planning in this is really good. The execution is really clean. There's a few quibbles like just like how things mechanically work. Like nowhere does it say a 1 always passes and a 6 always fails. It's kind of implied by the numerical numbers that are in there. I think adding that line would make this a little bit handier just because it's D6 based and then everything has a chance. Just get franchise in here. To the player, make them feel like they can always do something. But other than that, like this is just a really clever piece of game design, and I think it's just an example of you can just write a game, and it doesn't have to take up a ton of space. It doesn't have to take your whole life to do it. You can make a simple core system, and it can be very playable. This is a very playable game for not a lot of page real estate, and I honestly think more mainstream games could take a piece of learning from games like these. Obviously, the original OPR is kind of like this. It's the counterculture pushing back against mainstream games becoming more rules heavy. If it always happens that like in the independent design sphere, there are people who just want to throw the pendulum completely the other way, and this is a great example for it. The second thing, and kind of like last comment I'll make, is it actually holds its theme really well. One of the things that can happen is that when you really have a stripped down game like this, where the rules are very light, you lose kind of the taste of what the game's trying to offer. He puts page space down to things like just randomly naming what the rules are or the sacred relics are. And in the core rules, just giving you the names of the war cults and kind of some ideas of what they look like. Half a page, so like a sixth of the rules are not rules, right? They're just examples of things you could think of and ways to inspire you. And then he uses that information later on in Unholy Scavengers, right, to flavor the additional unit types and the sort of like dramatics personae, the unique characters can be in here. It's a nice plant and payoff, and it maintains the feeling like this is in a setting and a place. And that we're weird cults fighting to scramble over the whatchamacallit, the leftovers of dead gods. And even the RNG of like little things happening, like that last scenario, the scenarios could be very paint by numbers, but Unstable Relics having like a D6 table of just random events, that adds some Cracker Jacks to the game experience. And it's a very light touch, but it does enough that it holds the feeling of being what it's supposed to be. And gives you some inspiration candy for your brain to do that kind of kit bash stuff that I think this game is really designed to inspire. So yeah, great job. I will quickly hit the credits here at the bottom. Scott Malthouse is the actual designer. Again, art's public domain. And he names some inspirations for games he likes. A Song of Blades and Heroes, One Page Rules, Frostgrave Mordheim, and the Middle-earth strategy battle game. And you can see bits of DNA in all of these. The loot system of like how you pick up treasures and stuff is very Frostgrave. The activation system is very Song of Blades and Heroes. OPR obviously for the format and the layout and the stat lines. And then Mordheim and the Middle-earth strategy battle game for like the combat and movement systems, I think, are clearly some inspirations. So there we go. Again, I'll link all this in the description so you can go check it out if you want, and grab a copy. This is, if you have a fancy miniature collection, it would be very difficult not to just be able to put this on the table and play. I guess pay what you want, throw a coin to your Witcher, and hopefully, you'll be able to find some joy in this short format game. I love that the patrons pick different things every week. We had a bananas, like, vomit murder game last week. This week we've got a very clean, like, crisp piece of game design. And if you like more games like this, you should also check out the One Box War Game Challenge that War Games Atlantic and Malev did. Malev's there in the chat, actually. On the chat. Because there's lots of games in this sort of, like, format and theme. And also, of course, the boys at Black Slate Studios do a line of zine games like Void Cowboy. You've got Hill King and other of these, like, there's one where it's an Airbnb Nightmare. Airbnb Nightmare, I think it's called, where you're literally fighting a house. Just great, like, short format, fun to play, easy to adjust rule sets, and they're easy to find. And of course, my friend Mike at Plant Smasher has got a whole host of these games too. Things like his Rottenfarlden and Perilous Tales kind of fall in the same format, quick to set up, quick to play. And if you're an aspiring game designer, start with something like this. Just see if you can make something mechanically sound that moves around the table, and then go from there. Like, you can always bolt pieces onto it. So a great little lesson in, start small and then add to it. It's what was that game? It was a Nintendo game. Katamari Damacy, I think it's called, or Damacy, where you just roll around, the ball gets bigger. It's stupidest game. Very good hook. Has the worst dad ever. And basically, you're playing as the kid of this terrible space god who sucks. But yeah, that kind of game design where it's a really simple premise and you can just bolt more things onto it to make it fun and different. So there we go. That's another Indie Hour for the week. If you are a patron, of course, check out Monday's poll to pick the next one for next week and get it on a live recording. Big thanks to the patrons for picking this one. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.